wouldn't believe it. The doctor was ridiculous today.
The doctor?
I went to the doctor. I had a doctor's appointment. Yeah.
Okay.
Physical.
Is it scheduled annual physical?
Well, you're supposed to do an annual one. I haven't done one since I was 13.
You're too young for annual.
Well, you're supposed to do one every once in a while, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So whatever. So
well, you're pretty young.
Yeah, so I go. Guy's like, pretty much, got any questions? I don't know. What's a physical look like? He goes, well, your blood pressure's a little high, 143/86. And I said, well.
So you ask him, what does that mean?
I go, I said, I haven't been to the doctor in a while. Maybe I'm
just worrying about coming to see you.
Not too happy about being at the doctor right now. So my blood pressure's going up. So yeah, it was ridiculous.
Take notes on the Toronto's defense. I want to report on who's playing defense. What happened?
Let's go.
Ready?
Yeah, yeah. We are recording the video. Boom. We are good to go. As you said, back in the saddle.
Are we live?
We're live.
Okay.
We're live here.
Good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. So we had our producer had some technical difficulties on the last episode, and
who's the producer?
Well,
sorry?
we don't want to throw anybody under the bus or name any names or anything.
Right.
It may or may not have been me, but we're working on it. So I have my shirt on again, which you may have heard in the last one. I'm not sure if we can anymore, but in JPOW we trust. I don't know. I don't know about that.
And JPOW you trust.
Well,
anyway.
I'm not sure either, but
actually,
I thought the shirt was funny, so
I trust them more now than I did a couple of months ago. So
okay,
we could talk about that.
There we go. So we're back in. We got some interesting topics. Obviously, it's been a bit of a rocky road market-wise over the last couple of weeks. So we'll be chatting about a few things here and a little fun one at the end to hear about your trip. So. Do you got the quote of the day for us?
Well, I don't really have an official quote other than I just drove to Victoria and back, and I can say that this, Canada, is the best country in the world. Quote, Jerry Kallitsis. It is by far the best country in the world, and everybody needs to do this once. How's that? So we'll talk about it later, but that would be my quote.
Jerry Kallitsis' quote for us. All right, okay, let's get into it here.
Let's go. Back to the clock, eh? The 5-minute clock.
We're back to the 5-minute clock. This is going to be a long one. I think we might go over on this one. But obviously, we've heard central banks around the world raising the interest rates, raising the bank rates. And I think, everyone's felt it. It's been in the headlines. And it's been rather aggressive. So a couple of questions that we want to take a look at here. First is, are central banks done raising rates, or are they going to continue to rise? And then, will these further increases get inflation in check?
Let's make sure your opening statement that this is happening around the world. Literally, well, UK has major problems, but literally around the world, rates are going up. I don't want to say daily, but every time we read something, it's going up. And we're neighbors of the United States, and they just did their 75 basis points, which they very rarely do. And they did it, and of course we've done it, and I don't think ours are quite done yet.
Yeah, I think an interesting point is to mention that we do tend to look at U.S. data more so because they're such a huge part of the economy, of the world economy, and their data is much more readily available and more detailed. So,
and it more affects us, like it or not. There is
a
link.
Yeah, there is a link. It's not exact, but there is a link for sure. And so, yeah, the first chart that we want to look at here is the shadow Fed funds rate. So the 2-year bond yield is in green on that chart. This is a 20-year chart going back 20 years. The blue shaded area is the United States federal funds rate. So we can see on the far right-hand side of the chart that steep increase that we've seen in 2022 here. But this goes back all the way 20 years. The red bars are the two recessions. So we had 2008, 2009, and then more recently the COVID recession, 2020. So what we want to show here is that the 2-year rate tends to track relatively closely to that Fed funds rate. So they kind of use that to make their target.
It's almost identical.
It's almost identical.
It's
yeah.
almost perfect.
And again, this is going back 20 years. And you can see when we look back 20 years that before that blue shaded area goes down, we usually see the 2-year rate come down before we see the Fed cutting rates or keeping them plateaued there. So I think that's key to show the 20-year. And now you take a closer look. This is the same chart we're looking at here, just shorter time frame. So this is the last 4 years here. And so you kind of see that January 2019, 2 years started to come down. That blue shaded area, the Fed funds rate plateaued and then started coming down all the way to zero during the recession there, and has stayed there since, March 2022 of this year, where they started increasing again. So trying to determine when the central banks will stop hiking rates, I think looking at this 2-year and waiting for it to roll over or come down, I think we're probably going to see them continue to increase rates until we get that 2-year bond yield in the States coming down here to get a break.
Well, just from the end, just at the very far right, you see there is a gap between the green line and the blue, obviously, which if we have to forecast, I think we can safely expect another 1% or 3/4.
And we've seen,
that's what they're talking about.
The target is 4.2, somewhere around there, and maybe some people have said that they were Jay Powell. He was a little late on raising the interest rates. They're still.
He did say several months ago that it was expected to be 3.4, and now it's almost 1 full % higher, which is based on information as it comes in. So obviously, I don't think we're done. I agree with you. We're not quite done yet.
But it is interesting that the economic theory is that when you have inflation, spending tends to ramp up. And spending ramps up because if I think that couch or that computer or that thing is going to be worth more a year from now, then I buy it today. So the idea is that the higher borrowing costs, higher rates, will curb that spending.
It's supposed to.
It's supposed to curb that. But I think people know, I think people are saying, okay, high inflation is not a good sign for the economy, so they tighten the belt, right? So they're raising these rates, but people aren't buying the things now, right? They're
waiting.
They're waiting, which normally they would be buying the things historically. That's what the theory says, at least. But they're actually stopping spending and increasing their savings in some case,
and that's
right?
the theory of economics. That's the way it's supposed to work. And right now, I think a lot of people argue the point that have we really stopped? There is times where some things have stopped, some have not, and then they keep feeding us the CPI numbers and telling us what's going on. So I think everyone's a little confused. The bottom line is the rates have gone up, expected to go up a little bit more, and people are going to feel it. If it's your mortgage, if your car payments, if your line of credit, whatever it is, you're going to feel it.
Well, and I think that leads to the second part of our question. So we're going a little bit over time, but it's a good topic. So, does raising interest rates, will it curb inflation? So you have, there's more things out of Jay Powell's hands.
Yeah, it's not all. No, I agree.
We have these supply issues.
But it is the number one piece of ammunition that works against inflation. It always has. It just when people start, nobody wants to start it because it slows down the economy, potential of a recession.
Yes,
but it has to be done. It just has to be done.
Well, as Jay Powell said, we must keep at it until the job is done. So
that usually means he hasn't stopped yet.
He looked pretty serious in that last one.
Okay.
But so that those were a few interesting charts in terms of the bank rates, which we've seen increasing. A bit of a maybe a lighter topic than that, but an interesting one nonetheless. The Great Resignation has been a term that we've heard last year. The term quiet quitting is around now. The one chart that we had for that was just looking at the percentage change from a year ago. The blue line that you see there is the quit rate, so the amount of people that quit. So you can see here, dramatic increase, much more people quitting than there was a year ago. 100% more people quit their jobs. So if 10 people quit last year, you got 20 people that quit this year.
Use the word quit. It can be resign.
Resign, okay. All right.
There's a difference.
Put it a little bit nicer there.
People who are over 60 have had enough of this.
Well, but and it's not
to cash in their chips.
Well, and it's not. It's there are more people that are in that 55 to 65 bracket that are, but there's a lot of younger people as well resigning.
And that's something that has to be looked at because I don't think it's ever happened to this degree before.
And I think we've, from talking with people, clients and business owners that we get the chance to speak with, hard to retain people. One, even harder sometimes to find people that will do it.
It's horrible across the board. Like, I don't want to get into my trip again, but when you go into a restaurant and they're closed Monday and Tuesday because they have no staff, when you go to the drive-through at Tim Hortons and says, please have patience because we're short on staff, so it's going to take longer. Like, little things that we're not used to are happening over and over, especially in the hospitality, like the food and hotels and service industry.
Well, I think we even see it with corporations and companies alike as well, where you have somebody that comes on board, train them, and then all of a sudden they might not. I think there's more people that might not care as much if they are going to get let go, because the red line here is job openings. So we know there's a lot of job openings out there. So they know that it's easier to find a job as well. So people aren't staying in the same job for as long, kind of jumping around, trying to figure out what they like, right? Been a shift. There's been a shift from the employers having power, right? Saying, we'll fire you and it'll be tough to find another job, to now the employees have a lot. I don't know how long that's going to last if we go into the recession, but
and that's the fundamental thing about inflation is usually you have high unemployment rates. The rates are historical lows. Like, I think it was 4.9 in Canada, and they went up to 5.3 or some number, which is so ridiculously low with inflation going up. It doesn't make sense. Something's out of sync here.
Yeah.
But again, you are right. If I don't like this job, and I know I have potential of people opening the door and welcoming me for 10 new jobs,
I'm not so worried about it.
The employer doesn't have any power. You're right.
Yeah.
They don't. And I guess their power is pay more money. And you and I have had this conversation over and over again. The number of thing that concerns me the most about the pay more money is this is another way of inflation continuing on more than it should.
Yeah, and we've seen, wages have gone up. We talked about that before, and wages have gone up. Will they continue? How sticky are those increases?
I'm not blaming anybody. If your inflation is 7%, you need a bit of a raise to keep up. Like, I get it. The problem is, you give these raises, like we said before, I think we were talking about during the week, do I go back and ask the person, listen, I'm going to reduce your wage now that inflation is down? It's unlikely.
Yes, yeah.
Right? So when you commit to it, it's almost like I'm all in on this person. I will give you more money and certainly hope that my revenues will increase when inflation gets under control. And next year, I can't give you
You're not going to get that 10% bump
you get
that
1%.
You might have been lucky enough to get. Yes, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's and the quiet quitting thing is something that was I saw it on the Kitchener CTV. They had a whole thing about the quiet quitting, working fewer hours than you're paid for.
Is that a universal thing from young people, or is that across the board? I'm not sure.
Across the board.
Across the board.
Don't make yourself sound old. Holy smokes! Come
I
on.
am old. What do you mean
Don't make
sound
it.
old?
No, but don't sound old. I think working from home probably has made that, it's easier to get distracted. It's easier to go out and grab lunch at the house, and then all of a sudden you sit on the couch, you're watching TV, fall asleep, have a nap.
Would it be a wonderful survey to have people tell us, do you work a full 40-hour at home as you would have worked in the office?
Well, I think it was in one of these articles. I don't think I wrote it down, so I'm going to make it up and we'll fact check it. But it was something that people work 2.6 hours per day was of working.
How did they
in this
get
article?
that calculation?
They surveyed 2,000 people. It was out of the UK, I think. I think it was in this article. Yeah. Anyways, it's
a lot lower
another
than,
interesting phenomenon with the working from home aspect, probably lending to some more distractions there, right? So our next topic was streaming services, streaming TV. You're a big Netflix guy.
What a change of the world that's happened. If I didn't have Toronto Maple Leaf hockey and CBC News on cable, why do I need cable for? What do I need it for? I very rarely watch anything else.
Even with kids, we don't watch a lot of cable. It's more YouTube, Disney shows when they get their time to watch TV, and you're not turning on to watch Sesame Street like I remember as a kid, maybe watching.
Not only that, you have to wait for it at 4:30.
Exactly.
For example, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think you made an interesting point to me where if you take, I don't even know them all, Amazon, Crave, Netflix, Disney, and they're $20. Is that usually about what they cost?
Yeah, I think depending on which one. Yeah, exactly.
So you add them up, and let's say you have 4 of them or 5 of them, you're paying $80, $100. Well, my cable bill is that. So you can justify, what do I need cable for? But it's hard to say, cut out Netflix now. Cut out Crave. Cut out Disney with your 2 girls.
Well, and it's easier to find value when you go, well, Disney is $20 a month or whatever it is, and I'm getting $20 worth of value because I know that my girls watch it, right? And Netflix, if you watch a couple of shows on there, you say, okay, I'm finding value in that, right? But the cable is an expensive one, and if you're only watching the Leafs, and I'm the same, I really only watch the Leafs. If the Leafs had a good streaming, I don't really like the Sportsnet Now one, but if they had a good streaming, I mean, if I could just watch every Leaf game and stream it, I'd pay a couple bucks a month for that too, right?
Yeah, and it's not even on our topic, but it almost leads to the whole Cineplex Odeon theaters. I know in the States, one of them was filed chapter.
Yeah, I think it was a small one.
Cineworld, or I'm not sure who it was. Mm-hmm. But, I think it happened to us with travel agencies like 15, 20 years ago where we used to have them, and now they disappeared because you go onto your computer and you book your ticket.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the potential disappearance? I used to go to the theater with my wife all the time. One of the reasons was big screen TV, big theater, sound system. It was just get away for 2 hours. Well, now I have a big screen in my house. It's not as big as a theater.
Sure, but you're more comfortable.
I can stop it and go make popcorn.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, geez, what do I need to go to the movie theater?
Yeah.
And then the other problem is Apple and Netflix and all these guys, they have the money. So they can go and be the production company of some of these shows that are unbelievable.
Pay these big actors and put a bunch of money. I don't know what the Lord of the Rings has a new series, and it was something insane, the amount of dollars that they were putting into every episode. Game of Thrones has a new one out, and that kind of money. And I only see them if I'm watching a football game. You see the previews for the shows on CBS or NBC. And I mean, no offense to anyone that likes those shows, because there's obviously people out there that are watching them. But when you compare that show to, for me, a Netflix or a show like that, I mean, just the production quality seems to be a lot better. The storyline seemed to be more to what I like, right?
Well, I guess I'm aging myself to go back to DirecTV way back when we all had those illegal satellite dishes with the card. And I remember it was HBO and some of the, oh my God, this is so much better than the regular TV that I'm watching. It was crazy.
Like Sopranos. Like back in the day, you watched Sopranos on HBO, and it was amazing.
Almost like, it'll be my pleasure to pay you $20 a month for this. And this was before the official streaming and Netflix and guys showed up.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I suspect, I'm guessing here, is the cable companies are somehow going to link up with the internet and force your hand via internet and somehow make them the same, so that, oh yeah, you get internet, but here's your cable stuff that you get with it, right?
Well, and some of the cable stuff, you can watch it on demand too, which is fine. But then when you watch it on demand, you get locked out for the commercials. And the one thing that I think Netflix does and the streaming services, they don't need ads because the ads are built into the shows, right? Carrying a Starbucks coffee around, all that stuff, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Netflix have a bit of a problem with some subscriber reductions that they were talking about adding a commercial phase to some of their shows where you pay less of a price, but you have to take the commercials?
Yeah, Disney and Netflix, maybe they're going to lower the monthly cost, but you get ads. Right. So on YouTube, when you're watching our podcast, you might get ads that pop up throughout the podcast. That it's a 10-second ad, 5-second ad, 20-second ad, whatever it is. But I'm certainly watching more streaming services than I am cable TV.
Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. All right, on to the next one. Inflation hedges is our next topic.
Back to inflation.
Back to inflation. So obviously, big topic.
CJ, are we having inflation right now? I forgot to ask you.
There's certainly inflation, and we're hopeful that it's peaked and it's rolling over. Some of the data would show that. I mean, I don't know if you looked at our chart earlier, but you can, not to keep bringing that up.
Yeah, I don't want to keep teasing you about the word peak, but anyway, we'll just leave it at that.
Where was it? Oh, it's this chart coming up. Okay, good, perfect. Well, so you can see we do have a peak there in July of 2022. That's CPI is the yellow dash line there.
If you go to the previous little peak, there was a peak there too.
Yes, and that's what we call peaks, yes. And we're hoping that it's rolled over, but there is a peak there nonetheless. Yep. So one of the things that we talk with clients about, and clients people ask us all the time, how can we hedge against inflation? Should we be changing our investments? Should we be looking at these types of ideas? And obviously sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't based on individuals. But I think we wanted to look at an interesting...
historically, the playbook.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Historically, the following have been good inflation hedges going back decades. And so how have they performed during the inflation that we've obviously all seen here? So the one thing to clarify here is that CPI year over year, it shows it as 53% because it's showing the total return of CPI on the chart there over the last 12 months. So CPI year over year 12 months ago was 5.5%. And it's now 8.3%. So that's where that 50% comes from. Yes. So, but I wanted to include it there just to show it that it's going up. It's still going up with this chart I found from Koifin. So so looking at it here, what we have is our historical good inflation hedges are. Well, what do you think they are, Jerry? Off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head would always be gold. Put your money in gold. The world's coming to an end. Mm-hmm. There's only so much gold. Buy gold. Buy real assets, buy land, buy buildings, buy a house,
real estate investment trusts, and income,
stuff like that.
Mortgages. Yeah.
There was also usually when there's high inflation, the resource sector, which is kind of gold again, but anything that had to do with
commodities,
energy, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Before you get to your punchline, my punchline is the word inflation.
Don't try to jump my punchline.
No, because I know where your punchline is going. Okay.
You're trying to jump my punchline.
Go ahead.
By sneaking your punchline in.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Hey, listen.
The definition of inflation, if you get your dictionary out, it tells you what it is.
Okay.
But the circumstances that have happened right now everybody says, they always say it's different, and it's never different. I think we can all comfortably say this time is a little bit different. I think the result will be the same.
That's the famous last words. Okay, let's just mark this down. Let's timestamp this. This time it's different.
It's
famous last words.
I also said it's going to end up at the same point, but the combination of events that have happened, and again, I don't want to keep
unprecedented. I mean, they're shutting down the economy completely is an unprecedented thing.
At 60 plus years old, what I can't grasp is, for the first time in my life, when you're a business person and you're trying to get clients, and that's your battle. Whatever product you sell, shoes, computers, glasses, investments, you're trying to get clients.
Yeah, you're selling goods.
So, and that's the battle. And it's always a battle to get them. We are in a position where we have all kinds of people with all kinds of money wanting to buy, but we can't deliver the product. So to say that's part of inflation, the whole excess money thing, the demand, I get it.
Well, that speaks to some of the supply issues that we've had coming out of COVID.
It's just hard for me to understand that component of it. We see the housing, what's happened to housing, supply and demand.
This is why I do my inflation punchline first, because you get on your soapbox and you take it somewhere else.
You cannot tell me it's the same. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Well, and I agree. I agree with your point that if I don't think this, we're certainly not saying that these particular things that have historically been good inflation hedges are not good inflation hedges anymore.
Not bad. No.
It's not that. It's more of the unique situation where we're looking at these things and we're saying, okay, when you look at this chart here, the only one that is positive is commodities. And so you have gold here on here. You have gold. You have treasury inflation protected securities. You got real estate income, mortgages, real estate investment trusts, the market S&P 500, total bond index. Gold is on there as well. So these normal, typical good inflation hedges, you would think that they would be positive when we see inflation, are all negative other than commodities.
Which is tremendously volatile, as you see from the chart.
Yes, and I think commodities are a great indicator of inflation to come because they're built into, energy, fuel. You need to use oil to build your products in some cases. So I think they're a good leading indicator of inflation to come, which again, we've seen commodity prices come down. Could see inflation come down from here. So that's a good thing.
I didn't hear you whispering the last part. Was that?
And so, but I would think that potentially commodities are up right now because maybe not so much on the inflation side of things, but more because of the war that we're seeing in Russia, Ukraine. So I think that, that one is up, maybe pushed up a little higher. You can see the jump that happened right there, right when the war started at around earlier this year. So again, an interesting look at how a few of these assets have performed during inflationary environment. Some articles were talking about Bitcoin being an inflation hedge. I wasn't in that. Bitcoin wasn't included on this one, but it is down. And again, this is looking at prices over the last 12 months to clarify there too. So again, unique, unprecedented times. In one of our recent articles we shared.
I want to just remind people too that this ratcheting up of interest rates, which I think, my general opinion, it has to be done. But anyway, we can argue that at a different time. As it keeps going up, eventually we will get to the point, like you say, of peak, and then they go the other way. So it's always happened. I'm sure in a future podcast we'll show charts of what happens when they start easing and start decreasing rates. What happens?
Yes, and normally those are good signs. Easier to get money, lower borrowing costs, so you can make investments in projects, do things like that.
Anticipate growth and stuff like that, right? So it is uncomfortable, and we just have to be a little cautious of it. Like we tell our clients all the time, hey guys, just be aware of what's going on. That's all.
Yep. Yeah, and the one interesting quote that we heard from big hedge fund manager down in the States just recently in September, he had said, I'll read this, I have been doing this 45 years between the pandemic and the war and the crazy policy response in the U.S. and worldwide. This is the hardest environment I have ever encountered in trying to forecast 6 to 12 months ahead. So again, looking in that short term, I think it's there's a lot of things that aren't happening in the typical way that they may have happened in the past, in the short term here.
Well, when you get a war handed on you, you never expected an actual war. February the 24th, whenever it was, this will be done by the end of February. We're now 7 months later.
Still going on. Inflation.
And going on massively, and it's fueling inflation with supply. The ships with grain that finally got released from Ukraine. Like, all these things that are not part of the definition of what happens with inflation. Like, there's too many variables, and that's what that quote guy is saying.
Yeah.
That there's nowhere I can go back and predict something like this based on what's going on.
Which is why important, stick to a plan. Have a plan, stick to a plan. Make sure you're managing things in an appropriate way based on your time frame. Do I get to say
don't spend money foolishly all over the place? Do I get to say that?
That's always that's always the title of your book. Title of your book.
Okay.
So heading into maybe a lighter topic here. Of course, you went on a little road trip.
I did.
Went on a little road trip.
I left on August the 31st and drove my wife and two friends across our fabulous country, Victoria. Drove from
Ontario to Victoria, BC.
And
just
went northern Manitoba, northern Alberta, came back in the south, and I get to say it was 10,074.5 kilometers when I left to when I came back. And we saw some wonderful things. We saw some stuff, obviously from an economy point of view, back to what I was telling you about hotels not having people and restaurants having a tough time. Some wonderful sights. I didn't get a chance to go to Banff or Whistler this time because I did it last time.
But driving, you're not driving through all major cities. You're driving and stopping through, some smaller Canadian towns as well.
The one young waitress at Fernie made an interesting point to me that in Fernie, which was always a ski, other than Banff, there was a place where everyone went for skiing. Yeah. But she said now they're coming for fly fishing here, especially the Americans, and that what's happened to us is the Airbnbs, there's 369 of them purchased in this small little town, which means there's nowhere to rent. So you can't get staff. The guy that comes to work there, where is he staying?
Yeah. He's got to come from out of town.
And then she says she has friends in Banff, and she made this unbelievable statement to me. They estimate between 1,800 to 2,000 less, I don't want to call them students, young people that a lot of Australians, Swedish, Germans who come there and stay for 6 months. They ski on the hills, they get jobs. They're not there. So now they have 2,000 people shortage in these, literally, if anybody hasn't been there, they are world-class resorts, right? These are...
And there's no shortage of people going there.
Well, remember what you said? We've been tied down for 2 years. You want to go. You want to get up and go. So it's this combination of events that's happening that there's no playbook. Nobody knows what to do. What do you do? Yeah. You pay the person more money to work there, but they have nowhere to live. Now what happens? So I'm not sure what it is, but I can tell you as you go across, every province is a little bit different. Every province has its beautiful sights and stuff like that. And I would just tell, like I told you, every single person that's a Canadian, at some time in your lifetime...
Drive it?
No, I don't know about driving. You gotta drive.
I'm gonna do...
Okay, but remember, if you drive, you see things you don't see when you fly.
Special shout out here to Jane and Don and Laurel for gutting it out in the car with you. You said 10,000 kilometers, but I'd like a time in the seat estimate here from you.
What do you mean time? That is what do you mean?
Well, 10,000 kilometers, but how many?
You're in a seat.
I know, but how many hours does that equate to? Right? Well, are you going 100 kilometers? Is it 80 kilometers an hour?
If you average between, we'll say between 5 and 8 hours a day. So if you make the average 6, 6.5 times 20. So you stop for gasoline, you stop for something to eat. 125
hours if you're going 80 kilometers an hour. Does that make sense? That probably makes sense, right?
Yeah. I guess so. I will say one of my friends. I won't say his name. Everybody knows me, knows who it is. He called us a couple of times. The first time he called, he said, I got you on the GPS here because I told him, make sure you keep a track where I am in case something happens to me.
Yeah.
He says, you're 4 days in Ontario. Did you run out of money? So he made the first comment.
Yeah.
And then the second comment, he says, how can you be in the same car with 4 people for 20 days?
Well, I mean, you do have a very nice car, which is nice, but it's not.
He said
you're not sitting in business class seats in the back.
He doesn't think he can do it for 7. And then he also said, even if the car was behind me, another car, I don't think I could do it. So he put me in perspective of what happened. It's a long trip.
We've spent a lot of time together, but 125 hours in 3 weeks. How you were gone for 25 days?
It's 20 days.
20 days? 3 weeks. Yeah.
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Traveling every day.
That's full time. That's a full-time job.
Are you saying I did work? I was working, actually.
It'd be like if we were in the same office.
Okay.
It would have been funny to have one of these cameras on a dash cam in there, because I'm sure there was some good laughs had. And,
yes, there are some jokes that
yeah.
are not appropriate right now to say.
Of course, sure.
It is. I've been everywhere except Newfoundland, which I didn't make it last time we went out east. And out east is just as spectacular as out west. So I just find it sad that Canadians have never been to some of these places. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, let's go to Florida, let's go to California, let's go to Jamaica, let's go to the Greek islands. Beautiful places.
Yes, yeah.
But we too have some pretty spectacular places in this country.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
And
definitely.
Am I allowed to say for my car? Am I allowed to make a quick comment for my car?
Sure.
I got a Lexus
the
350, whatever.
The producer might edit it out. But.
He can edit it out. This car, or this type of car,
this is not perfect. This is not an ad, by the way.
No, this is not an ad. And I'm sure other cars are just the same, but it was you need a good car to go across that distance. Like you just need something.
You know what I was thinking, actually? The other day I was saying this to Jess, and I meant to comment to you, but I haven't yet, is on the road, okay, and we both are lucky enough, we both have new cars, but on the road, it is rare to see a car with rust on it.
It's done.
It's done. You don't see cars with rust on them anymore on the road. You know, and I drove to my cousin's cottage.
That's a very good
drive
point.
to Toronto a few times a month. Back out to Unionville, Stouffville, where I grew up, Markham, Newmarket there. You never see, even in the parking lots, it's rare to see a car.
And I used to live
with
in that
rust
environment with lots of rust. That's what I'm saying. You're right.
Well, I know you prided yourself on not having rust on that Lexus, duct tape and stuff, but no
Well,
rust.
you are right. And the other thing I'll tell you too, when you hit Manitoba and then you get Alberta, BC, and you're wondering why we have a shortage of pickup trucks, because they're all there.
They're all there.
1 out of every 5 vehicles is a pickup truck.
Was a truck out there. Wow.
I think if you ask Don, he'll say it's 2 out of 5. I'd reduce it to 1 out of 5. The quantity of trucks, I guess, farmers, the jobs that they do in those places weren't having pickup truck, right?
Yeah.
I was shocked. Shocked.
No rust on the cars. It's a good observation. Kudos to me.
Kudos to you. Are we done?
We're done. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any feedback,
and by the way, I know this is
know.
going to be edited, so I don't know what part is going to be there. Probably the part I'm talking right now won't be there, but good to see everyone. We'll talk again.
We look forward to the next one. Bye.